Hi, welcome back to another Dig Deeper video. Here today we are at our Ditch 8 excavation location, and this location is just east of the Eastern Palisade wall, which you can see behind me. We are located here because roughly 20 years ago they did excavations in this area and found where several ditches intersected. However, the research at the time was primarily focused on the 1607 fort, and this is obviously just outside of that. So they put a hold on these excavations and backfilled, and we're back here today to see if we can get a clearer picture on what these ditches are doing and what that means for land use in the past.
Alright, so here at Ditch 8, we're entering the final stages of our excavations, where we're actually starting to section some of these ditches that we found and test into them. So you can see here that we actually have 3 separate tests going, and that's because we actually have 3 ditches in here that are intersecting with one another. Now, when we're setting up our section lines, we have to pick these areas very carefully because we want to pick the spot where we're going to be able to get the most information out of the ditch. So for some, like this test over here, we've chosen a spot where it's just exclusively one ditch. So that way we know all the artifacts we're getting out of there belong exclusively to that ditch and are going to be all from the same time period. This one in front of me here actually separates out 2 separate ditches where they're intersecting. And so we're doing our best to track these ditches as we go down further into the ground, but we're hoping that the profiles, after we're done with this section, will show us exactly where those ditches were intersecting one another. When we're setting up our sections, first we put in our roofing nails into the ground, and we'll actually shoot in their exact coordinates, their northing, easting, and elevation with our total station. So that way once we come back and draw our profiles in the future, we can add those coordinates to the drawing and know exactly where on the island they are, and that way we also know exactly where the test is located. And then we also add in these string lines, so that way we can make sure that our sidewalls are nice and straight and right where they need to be.
So ditches are really important for us to investigate archaeologically because figuring out how they were dug, when they were dug, and when they got filled in is really important for us for figuring out how land use changes over time. So how James Fort transforms into a massive capital city is our focus in this area, and ditches play a really important role in that because they're often used as property boundaries for private property. So one way to demarcate where your land ends or what it's used for is by putting in a ditch, sometimes in conjunction with a fence and sometimes without.
My test is looking into the ditch that's running northwest-southeast. So on the surface, we had really soft sandy material, which continued for a small depth throughout the entire test. However, as we started taking it down, we noticed that on either side of this central channel, we came down on what was more clayey type material instead of that sandy central channel. And we think this is likely due to wash. So if you dig a hole or a ditch and leave it open for a while, the elements are going to cause soil to come back in, and then when the ditch is closed and filled in, they would fill it with a different material, is what it looks like happened here. So this central channel continued a little bit farther past where we saw the clay on either side, and you can still see small pockets of sand that's still left in that central channel. And then we also have a post hole that is cutting into this ditch. This post hole actually has a visible mold, so this would have been where the post actually was inserted into the ground. So I have my test unit here, and it's kind of in the center of this feature. And I mention that because we have artifacts that are sitting on the surface just outside this test, which means we might expand it. We'll see. But we do have what looks to be an Italian slipware. So it's a really pretty redware.
So for the test I'm digging right here, we're exploring where two different ditches actually intersect. And so normally when you're digging a test, you're going to take out the most recent feature first, so that way any of the artifacts in that fill don't contaminate what we're getting out of the older feature. In this case, we're actually taking everything down relatively simultaneously, so we're trying to take out all of the fill for the newer ditch, this one coming through here first, and then we're flattening out the unit, taking out the rest of the fill for this ditch, because we really want to track this line where the ditches are intersecting. This fill is very, very similar, and it's rather hard to distinguish. Right now, it just looks like this diagonal ditch is slightly sandier than the other ditch. So taking it down just bit by bit, inch by inch, helps us to actually track these changes in the ditch and make sure that we're excavating as accurately as we can.
So this ditch might be a continuation of Ditch 1, which was one of the first things that was excavated here as a part of the Jamestown Rediscovery Project in 1994, except it was just further south. They didn't find the northern terminus throughout the extent of the excavations that happened, so if this was a continuation of Ditch 1, that would be pretty interesting. The way that I'm digging here is to follow changes in the soil and stop once things become apparent that whatever deposit I was digging is no longer there. So before I started digging this test section, at the surface there appear to be two different kinds of fill. One being the later iteration of this same ditch, and then one being the earlier one. So as a rule for archaeology, you take whatever was last in the ground out first. So that's what I started to do here. I started to take out the fill that is presumably the later iteration of the ditch, which is sandy, lighter brown color. It had some brick flecking and charcoal flecking and no modeling. That's what really set it apart from the other iteration of the ditch, the earlier iteration, which has a lot of E-horizon and what looks like clay modeling throughout the soil. So we're going to keep digging in this area, trying to figure out what exactly is going on with this ditch specifically, and then see what we need to do, if we need to expand outwards at all, or if this is the extent that we have to dig here. So by putting in these test sections so that we can hopefully recover some material from the ditch or from the areas where the ditches intersect, and also the profiles that we're able to get off of the sides of the ditch, we'll be able to either determine that we have all the information we need for this area, or decide to open up some more tests so that we can take an even deeper look into this area. Either way, the work that we're doing here is filling in a gap that we've had in our knowledge at Jamestown for the past 20 years or so. So thank you for keeping up with us as we fill in these gaps, and thank you for watching.